After discovering it in preview, here is the new Cupra Formentor. Today we have a little more time to spend together with the latest generation of the Cupra brand standard bearer. A very special car indeed that, as we have seen, has been renewed so much, especially from the aesthetic point of view. I have to say this, we had already found out at the international preview that seen live it looks quite different than in the photos. It finds its sense of design and proportion so much that I like it much more than the past generation. And how does it get this special look? Well, it does it with different workmanship on the nose, with this very obvious frontal shark nose. Thanks to the new headlamp assembly that, as you see right now, is always three-dimensional, with always the dots that go to recall the geometric shapes inside the headlamp assembly, but also a new workmanship of the lower part of the bumper, with the whole lower part that you see that goes to increase the size of this huge grille, and that also go to water down the car on the ground. Car that still remains, however, this crossover, to be understood between a C segment and between a 5 doors and a C segment SUV, with absolutely new proportions and with the dimensions that are always 4 meters and 45. Also very nice is the work that is done on the front end. The design of the wheels is changed. Here we find a very powerful version which needs a very nice floating system, with a nice 4-piston Brembo caliper here at the front end, and then proportions that on the side have not changed much, but see a different identity at the rear part that now has the logo incorporated in the central part. The rear is illuminated, so there is no longer the logo, and above the coast-to-coast design of the headlight assembly line, but it is all merged into the same element with the three-dimensional processing of the rear elements. Down here then we have the exhaust system, which depending on the versions can be either simply a recall on bumpers, or it can be a tailpipe, actually 4 Akrapovic tailpipes, definitely very interesting. At the international preview we didn't get such a good look at the interior, but I'll show you exactly what changes. There has been very specific work done on the materials. They have changed. There are more sustainable materials. There are slightly different upholstery. The beautiful Formentor seats remain. In this case we have the Sabelt sport seats that accompany the VZ versions that would be for Veloz, speed in Spanish. Instead, the steering wheel remains all in all the same, so it doesn't change the cockpit very much. It changes the HMI that now has different logics. It has different, even more intuitive and even faster graphics. And then the whole upper part also remains, which is lined with these luminous elements that change color and go to work together with the context that the car lives in. Lots of three-dimensional workmanship, and then it tends to be an interior that doesn't change very much. New collaboration for the sound system with Sennheiser, and a rear end that remains all in all unchanged. And you may wonder, well, if that remains unchanged, if the rear end is identical, by the way, mamma mia, how beautiful are these carbon seat shells of the Veloz. I was saying, what's different? I'll tell you right now. And to do that, let's pay a visit to the other cars that are there. Back here, just to complete the information, I will also tell you that there is always 450 liters of usable volume, so little changes. So where does it change? Changes motorization side, because back here there is something definitely interesting. You know, before, to have the ultimate in driving dynamics of new Cupra Formentor, you had to necessarily approach the VZV version. VZV stands for the 5-cylinder that was borrowed from the cousins of Audi, and that gave an incredible dynamic to the car, not only because of the 390 horsepower, but also and especially because of the presence on the rear. By the way, here I show you a new unreleased body color, always matte. Also what we have seen here right now is matte. However, so is this body color that is a kind of matte petrol blue, but lighter beautiful. Back to us. I was telling you it gave an unprecedented dynamic to the car because of the presence in the rear of the torque splitter, that is a double clutch pack to electronically controlled, that could send back on the same axis, indeed direct up to 100% of the torque on one wheel or the other. Here this torque splitter now is also integrated on the 2000 TSI engine, which is what equips this version, which is a very clever thing in my opinion, because you have an even lighter front end of the car, because the 4-cylinder engine tends to weigh less than the 5. We have a better overall weight balance, and we have the ability to actually access a driving dynamic that is very reminiscent of a rear-wheel drive, even on the turbocharged four-cylinder. Here now I can't show you, but I can assure you that there is also an Akrapovic exhaust system. I'm sure the cover pictures will give us a hand, which definitely goes to denote the super sporty character of this Formentor. Now let's move on to the road driving chapter. Let's go and drive it that we understand exactly how it works, or rather how this new 2004 cylinder performs. Let's go and find out what the engines are. I'll give you a recap while I'm behind the wheel. I'll also tell you that there is a diesel version that I forgot to tell you afterwards. The only thing is that with the diesel version there is only front wheel drive. But let's cut the nonsense and go and see how this new engine goes on the road. Because yes, I was looking forward to driving this Cupra Formentor Veloz with this 333 horsepower 2000 TSI. I was really looking forward to it like Christmas morning. Because why? Yes, the majestic, wonderful 5-cylinder. They had to limit it to 390 horsepower so as not to bother whoever that engine lent it to Cupra. But having this 4-cylinder gas me because first of all, the 2000 TFSI Ivo from the Volkswagen Group is an incredible engine. Really one of the best 4-cylinders ever created for delivery, for malleability. But the nice thing in my opinion is that with this engine in front, on the front end, you generate even less weight, so the car becomes even more balanced, because basically it is a little bit unbalanced on the front end, this Formentor based on the MQB Ivo, but at the same time it gains horsepower because now we go up to the altitude of 333 horsepower, but above all it gains dynamics in the rear end because they have put in the rear end of this car the torque splitter that was on the VZV until recently, and this gives a new dimension of the chassis possibilities of this car, chassis possibilities that therefore grant the rear axle a starring role in the driving dynamics of this car, that is therefore able to access even playful modes such as drift mode. However, if you really don't want to place yourself in the middle of a parking lot, we should say circuit closed to the public and whatnot, to put on a show note that already in the Cupra driving modes, in the sport driving modes, this double clutch pack that's back there does some magic because it can direct the torque transversely on the rear axle asymmetrically, and as a result continuing to read the steering wheel angle, the pressure on the accelerator. It understands what we want to do and gives us a hand by going to push from behind. It really looks like an all-wheel drive that is basically rear, even though in the reality of the facts it's the exact opposite, and it's a very pleasant thing for sure. Then, in addition to the presence of this track splitter, there are really the chassis qualities of this Formentor that are wonderful. You can feel that there is the hand of someone who knows how to test cars well, like Jody Genet, and you can feel that there is really the will to make this Formentor a car that wants to be driven. We've seen it from the outside. Already the presence of the SC button there in the middle lets us know that he wants to make things clear right away. When you get on board the car, he says, look, I'll take you around, let's do whatever you want, let's go on vacation together. However, know that I can also put you in a position to make me drive it very well. And it's hallucinating, half joke, half dig, that you have to go to Cupra to look for an Alfa Romeo in 2024, and it is a very pleasant thing. Anyway, quibbles aside, I have to say that this 2000 TSI, yes, it has 333 horsepower, however, would deserve a little bit more. It would almost have to be touched up. Not the chassis, because in this car it is already fine. And speaking of the chassis, I can't not tell you about the suspension, which has a wonderful calibration, both front and back, because thanks to the DCC chassis adjustment, they really managed to change the sole, and they managed to give good support to the car, going selectively and dynamically, damping differently depending on the driving profiles. It's a nice steering assembly, it's a very quick steering, and even more than the steering, what I like is the brake pedal, a brake pedal that has a really wonderful modulability, that manages to bite with an immediately present and inciting bite, almost to keep doing stretches of acceleration and braking. By the way, this is a car that's not said by the marketing that it's made for people who have a second hand and want to indulge in driving, because guess what? It's the only one in the group that has a very interesting feature. It doesn't have a throttle cutoff, meaning that if you want to drive it really well, you won't find the throttle cutoff if you accidentally go to brake with your left foot. And it's little things, little details that still make you realize the love behind the development of the driving dynamics of this product. I have to be honest, I'm really surprised, happy to find the Formentor I found a few years ago when it was introduced. I'm happy to see a new engine that gives a new identity to this car, and I'm happy with this version because in my opinion it remains in absolute the best one to buy. Then we'll see a little bit what the future holds with some new motorizations, but if I had to choose, I'm already 100% sure I would take this one. Then of course, if you don't want the most beautiful version to drive, which is this 333 horsepower version at the moment, there are the other motorizations that come with a base range proposed and offered with the 1500 petrol at 150 horsepower in manual, and then moving on to the 1500 petrol also at 150 horsepower, however with 48 volt mild homologation, a very interesting engine that also has a special operating logic thanks to the millicycle and embraces the DSG automatic transmission as entry level in the line. Formentor. Then instead the 2000 TSI range, this time starts with the 204 horsepower, so not 190, and then goes up to the 265 in the VZ, again front wheel drive, while the 204 horsepower version is all wheel drive. Then finally ending with this engine, which is the 333 horsepower all wheel drive with the rear torque splitter. Plus, as we saw at the preview, there are some interesting versions for those who want a plug-in hybrid powertrain, because now the plug-in in the Volkswagen group boasts a significantly larger battery size, almost close to 20 kilowatt hours, allowing up to 100 kilometers of driving in full electric mode, among other things with DC charging at 50 kilowatts. The power steps of the plug-in hybrid systems go up to 272 horsepower, so significantly more powerful than before, and embrace a new powertrain, because the plug-in this time also uses the new 1500 TSI as a base to generate the hybrid system, and no longer the old 1400. In short, a Formentor VZ that I like it, I really like it, and makes me feel comfortable all the time. And it's amazing how this crossover manages to have such distinct chassis qualities, so pronounced, so beautiful, and it manages to entice so much driving. But now I would say let's get down that we draw two conclusions. Did you see that I finally got to show you these 4 Akrapovic exhaust tips on this Formentor VZ? Now only one thing remains to be defined: pricing. I'll be very quick. Prices starting at 37,000 euros, 37,200 euros for the 1500 gasoline manual version. A word of advice: go for the 48 volt mild hybrid, which is still a Miller cycle 1500 with, however, a very advanced hybrid technology, even though it is a mild technology, and especially with the 7-speed DSG automatic transmission, which gives you access to all the driver assistance that this Formentor on the MQB Ivo platform has and deserves. So 37,200 or 39,000 for the version 1500 mild hybrid with the automatic transmission. Let me know a little about what you think of this new Cupra Formentor. Let me know what you think of its new frontal aesthetic profile. I must confess to you that it has gone to give much more personality as a design to the frontal view of the car, and this shark nose and top sculpted in this way really blows my mind. Write me everything below in the comments, and we will see you in the next video, always on AM Network. Ciao!